Okay, this is the scene that I just stamped out, and I decided I wanted to put it on a card, in a card format. This is a quarter-page scene, and I just have it on a half-page formatted cardstock. I mean, it's a full-page cardstock, but just with a simple kind of beige color matting around it. This is a scene that I kind of wanted to do in kind of an antiqued style, meaning I just kind of did it in a range of brown tones for the most part. The distressings are a good way, addition to the color scheme in terms of giving kind of a slightly more aged look to something. I did it with the idea of a sepia print in mind. I mean, this doesn't really look like a sepia print, and just the very fact that I'm doing it on glossy cardstock too kind of, gives it a more modern look and the saturations and whatnot. But anyways, I mean, it's kind of my version of it at least. You can see in the, kind of a brown toned application. I used a lot of the pale orange gel pen, but I don't know if you can see this. Definitely won't pick up on a scan, but those kind of more goldish dots are from a metallic gold gel pen. Alright, so those kind of make fun little embellishments in a scene of this color. You can branch out and use different colors other than say like I've been doing like a white gel pen. Okay, so anyways, the antique looking autumn Brook stamp, and this is the video on how it was done. Hello and welcome to Stampscaping 101. I'm going to do just kind of an interpretation of a sepia tone print here, going for something kind of antique in appearance, and going to do it in a monochromatic warm tone color scheme. I've just picked out a range of brown tones in my Marvy ink pads. This one's a black. And also we'll mix in the distress inks in the form of antique linen and tea dye. I mean, of course, those distress inks would be really great for anything that you want to make look kind of aged. So those would be great ones to incorporate in. You don't have to use these exact colors, of course. Just go for something, get a range of kind of your brown tones and kind of line them up going from light to dark. Okay, the image I'll be using is the Autumn Brook stamp. And I'll keep this composition simple. I'm going to do some of the Altocumulus cloud, and we'll put that in the sky and maybe some in the water as well for the reflection of it. Okay, what colors to stamp this in? I don't want to stamp out my main imagery too light. In some instances you can, you can, but I'm just afraid when I bring all these different tones into it, I don't want to lose the form of the, the main image. So this could be done black as well, but I think just to push distance a little bit more, I'll do it in something less than black in terms of value. Okay, this pad right here is the Marvy number 18 dark brown. Okay, and I'll go roughly midway on a quarter-page card. Plenty of center pressuring pressuring from right to left, keeping the stamp nice and flat and not rocking it. Okay, let the ink transfer as well. Okay, a nice crisp, even impression. And let's see. I have a choice here. For the sky, I think I'm going to go a little bit lighter. Now, I could go with a lighter hue, you know, and go something like this number 6 brown. Or I could ink this up with a dark brown, this Altocumulus cloud, and stamp it out, and then take it into the scene, so it'd stamp out a drier impression of it, and it'll thus be lighter. But I think I'm just going to change this up and go with a different hue. This brown, I mean, it's not only lighter, you know, it's not just the lighter version of the dark brown, but this one has a little bit more warmth in it. Probably yellow or kind of an orangish tint to it. Now, I think I want to push this back in the distance a little bit more, so I think I'm going to blot it first. And let's see. I think I want this at a slight angle, like about like so. Okay. Now that might be almost too light. Let's do another impression of it. Let's go light down here as it goes off into the horizon, and let's go with a darker version on my perimeter. Okay. Like about like so. And we'll go for a impression of it in the water. Okay. Blotting some of this off. And we'll go with that down in the water. Try to wipe off a little bit in here so it stamps out drier and kind of match that area up there. Okay. Looks very busy right now, but not to worry, because we'll be running a lot more tone into the scene, of course. Okay, I'm just kind of filling out the edges a little bit more with some texture. Okay, going back to our color scheme, light to dark, and somewhere these distress inks fit into the color scheme as well. I think the first color that I'll start off with, though, is Peach Bellini. It's of the orange, yellowish, kind of warm spirit, of course. Okay, as always, define your light through the use of shadow. In this scene, I think I'll generally have, you know, a basic horizon glow working in there. Okay. The Peach Bellini is an Adirondack light, or formerly known as seashells. And that's put out by Ranger. Okay. I've left a little bit of the white of the paper here and a couple areas of the trees. I don't know if I want it on the trees. Maybe somewhere like that, a little on the bushes and whatnot. It's kind of hard to tell because this is such a light color. Okay. Switching up, let's go to our next. I try to go incrementally darker. I don't like to go from something really light to something medium, you know, if I can. I just make little incremental steps in terms of color scheme. Okay, just basically adding this color that's not too much darker than the peach Bellini in the same areas that I added the peach Bellini. Now it's not as if the work that I did with the peach Bellini is for, you know, not. It's a color that's being used as my base layer. It saturated the page kind of with a nice slippery ink for my Marvy inks to come. The distress inks are the same brand as the Adirondack Lights, so they're both of that same type of consistency. Now, I don't like to use too many of that same consistency because it really coats the page with the amount of ink that I tend to use, and kind of it makes it hard to apply some colors after. It makes it easier in terms of the blending aspect and the gliding of this, but sometimes the inks are so thick it makes it hard to kind of penetrate the cardstock, you know, the surface of it to get darker tones. I mean, you can always kind of, you know, put on a few layers and let it sit for, you know, 10-15 minutes or something like that. I usually don't like to wait, though, too long, so. And, I mean, of course, I don't know, you can do some experiments, heat setting something as well. I haven't really done that before. It's not something I really like to do, though. I don't like to heat set it for too long because I do want it slightly moist. You know, because it makes the other colors to come easier to blend into the scene, onto the card, whatnot. So maybe if you do heat set it, just, you know, don't dry it out completely. Just make it so the whatever colors you're applying in this, you know, layering, sponging method, just make it so that you can, you know, get some penetration or whatnot with it. Okay, that was the tea dye. I think I used the antique linen and the tea dye. The tea dye was just the one that I used right now. Let's go up to the number 6 brown. It's the same brown that I stamped out my Altocumulus cloud in. Okay, fairly dark right there, okay? It's a lot darker than anything that I've used so far. And I'm getting a lot of coverage. This pad feels like I re-inked it pretty recently. And I don't know, I must have. I don't remember doing it, but that being said, when you move into your darker tones, kind of be careful not to just obliterate everything with like a stroke going across all your light areas. Apply gradually, stay on the perimeter a little bit longer, then take it in. Doing the 4 corners, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know. I'm just pointing these out, don't apply it in that method, you know, your ink, but 4 corners tends to close the composition a little bit. Okay. That is the 6 brown. Okay, now here's the thing. I really add a lot of this brown right here, but you can see all that Altocumulus cloud texture, right? And it's because I've layered a lot of these thicker style inks over the top of the impression of this. Alright, when I used this at first, I used it with Marvy inks. Marvy inks are a little bit thinner in terms of the consistency, so they get right into the pulp and they can penetrate the glossy cardstock and dry to the touch fairly quickly. And I've put those other colors on top now, so they're in between this applicator application of the color and the impression application of the color. So you can see where these other types of inks come into play, you know. You can see this ink is not, you know, I'm adding a lot of this ink right here, okay? And it looks fairly dark, but look at this. I mean, I can just, it spreads right out. Okay, now that's the beauty of having those thicker inks down there. It makes it very easy to spread these other types of inks around. Okay, but it's also acting as a bit of a resist just because it's wet and it stays wet for a while. Okay, that's, again, that's what you want, but you know, you just have to kind of show a little bit of patience when applying your darker tones. You know, don't try to rush it or anything. Just let it set up for a while and let it penetrate in the page in those areas. In the meantime, you can kind of go in and add a few little details here and there in your scene. I'm kind of using the tool, the stylus tool on its edge to get into some of these areas. Okay. I want to get some of this color into that water. It was too light. And when I say that, I just meant it was too light. Not as some kind of rule, but just to my eye. I wanted to tone it back a little bit and bring more of the attention to this light shining off some of these trees. Okay, so there's no right or wrong or something like that. It's just wherever you want that light to go. Wherever you want that light to go is typically where the viewer's eye is going to go too. Okay, that's enough of that. Number 6 brown. Let's go to the number 18 brown. Now the number 18 brown is the one that I stamped the autumn brook in. So you see I use the same colors in my color application, layering of inks as I did with the imagery, and that's where things kind of merge and blend in with the background. Okay, adding it to the corner. I really have to tap here if I really want to get darker, because if I swipe, it's coming right off. Alright, so you can do this and just kind of build up, you know, little beads of ink on the surface of the page, and that's how you get it darker, okay? If I wipe it, you know, it's like wiping a piece of glass or something like that. It'll, you know, wipe right through it. Okay, now that being said, I mean, naturally it just depends on kind of the relative humidity too of a given area and how fast your inks are going to be drying. If I'm stamping this out in the middle of a, you know, very arid area, or just, you know, just low humidity, this ink is probably going to dry a lot faster, so you just have to gauge it. I mean, of course, you know, it's things like how wet is your pad, you know, how much ink are you applying at any given time. That's going to affect it too. But it's not a complicated thing, you know. After you do a couple of these in this technique, you'll get a feel of it, you know. All right. Just brown. Dark brown is just what the doctor ordered here, I think. You see how it's really coming together now? Let me move this piece of paper out of here. It's kind of coming together a bit. That number 9 brown is a little bit too... It's a little bit too bright for me, and orangish, I think. Okay? So let's say I want to keep the warmth of it, you know, the temperature of it, visual temperature, but not quite so much of the intensity, the relative brightness of it, okay? I just want to tone it down a little bit, and let's bring some more of this dark brown into it to kind of knock it down a little bit. I still feel that it's rich. You know, you get the richness from that brown, but it's not quite so hot of a brown. Okay. I just feel that, you know, if we're going for this sepia look, you know, I don't want too many bright colors, you know, like that warm feeling, that glow from it, but, you know, not intense. I don't want too much intensity here. Just kind of a nice glowing feel in terms of the lighting going on in here. Okay, let's see. Let's put a few more streaks across the water in some areas, just to reiterate kind of a smooth surface, you know, that water would represent. Okay, so far so good. All right. My current favorite new stamp. I love real basic stamps, you know, that can be used in so many different applications. Textures tend to be one of them, of course, because they're so generic, you can use them anywhere. This one's just a grouping of little rocks. Let's try it in some various incarnations of brown that we've used down here in imagery, but primarily in terms of the layered colors. Okay, this is the Distress Ink tea dye, and as I stamp it out, I'm realizing that because I went darker already in the background, well, I don't know about the background, in the layering process, I can barely see it. So let's move on to, let's try the brown. I think this number 9 brown would be a little bit too warm, I think. Warm and bright. Okay, this is the number 18 brown. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 impressions so far. Okay, re-inked. Going for a few multiple impressions off one inking for a little bit of variation. Okay, good. Let me switch up to... That was the Tiny Rocks image, by the way. This is the Tiny Rocks... Actually, that was Tiny Rocks Small. This is Tiny Rocks... Just Tiny Rocks. There's no Tiny Rocks Large. Okay, this is the larger version again. I just stamped it out in dark brown. Texture. Alright, let's see, how are we doing? I was trying to think if I want to use any more of the unmounted stamps before I put this sticky protective sheet back on my tack and peel. I'm sitting here pondering kind of what I want to do next. Let's go for the foreground. I'm going to stamp the foreground in black just to create some good separation from the background. That being said, I think I'm just going to tip the edges of my card a little bit with black. It should, I don't know, kind of frame off the scene by going dark in the corners. Kind of bring this down around the trees as well. And putting some of it into the shadows of the autumn brook. This is kind of nice. Going with this darker color, it's blending in a lot of those rocks that kind of contributed to somewhat of a busy look down in that watery area. Okay. Now, inevitably, I mean, using these inks, these glossy, these dye-based inks on glossy cardstock, I mean, we're going to get a glossier look than, probably a sepia print would have looked like. But again, this is just kind of going for an interpretation. If I stamped all these images out so far and did like a bright blue sky or something like that, and autumn, color scheme for the trees, or a spring one would be in green. I mean, it would look quite a bit different, and just by going through this kind of simple color scheme here, I do think it looks a bit more aged and reminiscent of, like I said, harkening back to the days of sepia prints or whatever, or you can say just a modern day, sepia treatment of a digital file. Okay, this is the oak branch. I'm not going to use the whole thing. The oak branch, often, you can use it as coming from above, but I think I'm going to use it in the foreground for bushes. I feel that it kind of reiterates what's going on in some of these areas right here, some of these, so that foliage along the water's edge could be, something akin to, this branch, if you, saw something like that up close. Holding it down for a period longer too, just giving the ink a chance to transfer onto somewhat of a, semi-moist surface. Okay. There. And it looks unbalanced as is, doesn't it? It needs something on this side, so that's what we'll do. Okay, usually on large stamps and smaller pads, I tend to like going pad to stamp as opposed to inking it up like this, which I can do too. I just feel like it's more comfortable like this. I feel like I'm putting on a nice, even coating like this. Okay, this oak branch I've made a little bit more dense in one area of the stamp and kind of lighter on the other, so I mean you could use it, if you want a lighter touch, like that as opposed to that. I inked up probably this much of it, like down here and up, even though I'm just using this portion of it. Ink up more than you think you're going to need. Because that's better than just saying, okay, I'm just going to use this little portion, and let's say, for example, I inked it up from right here to here, and it's just, it's just one more thing to do. If you kind of lift this up and say, oh my god, it didn't stamp over here because I didn't ink it up or something like that, the only thing you can lose is, that's a tiny bit more ink, insignificant. But, you're perfectly safe in stamping it out and getting a full area of what you wanted. Okay, in this case, it was just a little bit of that branch that I wanted here and there. I don't like what's going on right in here. Kind of this area. It's really kind of lost, huh? Alright, let's go back to this. I shouldn't have done my tack and peel thing on there quite yet. Let's go. This is just a raw dye right here, piece of rubber, and just sticking it on there. Let's go with a nice dark impression of this in that dark area, just to kind of create a little bit of contrast and texture back there. There's too big of an area for my eye, without having something kind of going on there. Oh boy, you probably can't see it. Here. Okay, maybe another one right here too. Okay. I don't know if I like that right now either. I don't like that as a final product. It's not that anything went wrong in that area. But, as I was talking about variation down here in the water, it was just one big blob of dark brown. Let's go back up here, I think. And let's try the dark brown again. Okay. Use some of this texture. And, okay, this is before, right here. That looks okay, but let's go in there again. Okay. I need a little bit more depth up there. Okay. That's the dark brown up there now. You see how that stands out against the background? It just gives it another slight surface layer. Okay. And you don't have to stop there. Let me check something. Okay, let me see what I have here. Okay, I wanted the Walnut Stain. I obviously have another pad somewhere. This one's actually Vintage Photo. I put the wrong pad, but okay, that might be dark enough though. I'm going for something fairly dark. Let's try another layer of another color up here. Okay, I think that's just what that needed. Let me see. It's a good, rich, kind of warm brown that I'm using right now. Kind of in this one's, like I said, this one was, what did I say again? Vintage Photo. Well, I guess Vintage Photo is Sepia, right? So, okay, it's kind of warming it up a bit. It's of a different spirit than this one, even though these are kind of similar. Let's bring some of this into here as well. You know, if you have a certain color in your sky, then it stands to reason that you'd have a similar hue, over areas of your landscape, because that's the color, that's colored light that's shining down there, especially water that's supposed to represent something fairly reflective. Okay. I don't know if I ever really did a sepia print in my old photography classes. I thought someone did. I think that was one of our assignments, or that we could do. I'm not sure if I did it though. Alright. Trying to think if I need something more in here. Possibly another branch or something. Oh, here. Let's do some birds going across the sky. This is called Ducks in Formation. I'm trying to decide on what color to do it in. I can do it in dark brown. I could do it in a dark brown blotted. That would make it look, farther back in the distance. I think the dark brown looks good too, because the size of them in relationship to, this image right here, I think it would be, these ducks would be roughly at the same distance as that stamp. And so we'll just lay that right in here. Light even pressure, don't press too hard, don't press too light. But especially don't press too hard. You don't want a big blob, of your birds or whatever you're doing. Alright, now let's see if this scene can stand a little bit of highlights. This is kind of a pale orange gel Signo pen. And it's of that spirit of the sepia print, so if I don't want something quite so bright in the form of like say specular light down here in the water. Then I can use the, the pale orange color instead of white. Sometimes the white, I'm going to try the white in here, just because I can't seem to get away from those gel pens. I really like them, as you can probably tell from all these videos, but sometimes the white in this type of scene, like sepia scene, sometimes it doesn't look right, to have such a bright highlight. So a lot of times I don't even use it at all in these scenes. Okay. Let's go back in the distance here and add a little bit of highlights onto some of these bushes down here, where I used different brown tones to kind of color in and add shading here and there. But it's nice to go back in and add in a little element of light back into those areas. And what I'm talking about is I just added a few little highlights on the tops of some of those bushes in the distance. You can see some right here. There it is down there in the water. I don't really see an opportunity to do it up in the sky, so I don't think I will. Okay, here's the white gel pen. I see this little area right here, this little bank of sand or something. I'm going to add a little highlight down there. It was just the area that remained light, and just kind of by chance, more by chance than design, when I started defining the light in some areas. Okay, here's this little bank again. It's the, on the stamp right here, there's a little bank right down there, and see this one right here? A little bit in the distance. I kind of like redefining that a lot of times after I've, or if I've gone over it too much ink in the inking process. I mean, it's just a thin little area, but it's hard to retain that kind of in the process of coloring a scene. So I don't even try to retain it. I just go back in with the gel pen and find that just easier to do than to, try to avoid it. Actually, the white is looking pretty good down here. I think it's kind of brightening it up a touch. Yeah, I'll try to use it somewhat sparingly. Maybe I'll add a few down here in the lit water. And this little tree here happens to be a little bit lighter, or even maybe a lot lighter. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Zoom out a touch. A little bit of a slightly more aged look to the scene, going with your brown tones. Just by changing your color schemes around, you can really change the spirit of something you're depicting. We can go with the exact same compositions and do it in somewhat of a blue colored scheme, just like we did here. in the brown tones, and if I did it in the blues, it would look kind of more like a winter scene or midnight or something of that sort, because it would be all cool temperatures. All right. And the reason why this looks antique is, just our association of, kind of what we know of antique photographs. So, anyways, it's just kind of a fun variation, and you can try that on with any scene, and, you can come up with some interesting effects. So anyways, they're pretty fast to do as well, because you're just working through kind of a set grouping of colors. I mean, on this one I used, roughly about 7 colors altogether, not including black. I could have probably done it with 4, alright? But, I don't know, if you have the colors and you're just kind of curious about what they'll look like, you put a layer down and see if you like it or not, and that's what I generally do, so. Anyways, thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed the scene.